Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. So, I had the opportunity this past holiday season to visit and catch up with friends and families whom I haven't seen in a while. And even, I had some good gatherings and it's pretty chill. It was great. I enjoyed it. And it was especially meaningful for me because in the years past, when it comes to the holiday season, it's always just been me and my immediate family in the household. And that was it. And I'd probably may go out with friends or something if I see in the group chat, hey, we're doing this thing. But normally it's just been like at home, kept it really local. But like I said, I just had the opportunity to spend some time. It was like this one weekend where I got into a lot of social and it was great. I got to connect with not just connect with, friends, families, loved ones, etc. But it was also what I appreciate about it too, as well, is that I had the opportunity to just shift things up in terms of routines. I was in like at some point in my mind, like, oh shoot, I haven't done my exercise routines over that weekend, but I know better. It's like it's okay. It's not gonna missing out a day or two of what I usually do in my routines is not gonna kill me. Especially because if it's something that I have done for a while, I have it that deeply ingrained. I've worked that groove that deeply, then there's no reason to worry about losing it because it would actually take more effort, you know? And so back to, visiting family, and and one of whom that I haven't seen in a while is my niece and her son. His name is Zion, or he goes by Zai. And this little guy is just 2 years old, about to be 3, and just so full of life, you know? And, one of the things that yeah, one of the things that I've, observed in him, he likes to spin. He has, like, a lot of high energy, just bouncing and all over the place. And one of the things I discovered is, like, if I wanted to interact with him, I would actually have to match his energy. Otherwise, he's just gonna be in his own world. And I thought that was very interesting. Like, I could call out to him, but he won't pay attention because he's in his own world. He's doing his own thing. He's enjoying himself, right? And, but then when I started getting like, oh, get just whether it's just like me kind of like raising up my voice a little bit in an excited way or just moving dynamically or, uh, just using these ways that to just interact with him and, to kind of match his energy, then he starts to take notice, and then and it's always so funny just like, when he giggles and laughs. And I'll even mention as well, to even expand from that, like, and then another one that I've actually officially met. So one of my best friends lives in the West Coast, uh, and relatively speaking, has has a son. His name is KJ, and I had the opportunity to meet him in person as well that same weekend. And he as well also has this energy that's very bubbly. And when he smiles, when he's turned on, he's turned on. Although KJ was interesting because he's an individual that's very chill, and especially when it comes to being around strangers. At least when I met him, there wasn't anything like that gave him that stressed him out or anything like that. And so I just thought that was very interesting. And so it was so basically, part of what I want to get into this episode is talking about um, Zion and KJ, these two young ones. Um, I think when I look at children, when I look at even kids, especially like if they're like in in kindergarten and such. What I've come to understand about children is like, and one way to put it is like they're closer to the wisdom of the universe. And to kind of explain that a bit, I mean, this I could take that even deeper, but I think one way I want to go about explaining that goes back to what the one observation that I was sharing about, seeing the enthusiasm and joy in both Zion and KJ. Seeing in both of them just light up is and it's for them it's just natural. They're just like pure feeling. They're like a bubble of pure feeling. They're not at that point where they've been where when we get to our developmental years of our intellect and we start getting that influence in the programming, they're not there. But it's interesting how when you take that programming out of the equation and you just observe a being, a soul that's just in pure feeling. It's interesting how, on both occasions, both of them were like the center of the show, you know? And that really says a lot about what we are as a soul. Because I remember one experience I always find myself remembering. I remember I was at a concert in DC in downtown, and I remember I was like enjoying this concert. It was a solo thing. I was having a good time. I was dancing. I was just really, really enjoying myself, just having fun. And at some point, there was a guy with her friends who were just, doing their thing. But this one guy she was doing her thing and dancing, and she noticed me. And then she ended up saying, "Hey, we had like a little brief exchange, but like she initiated the interaction." And like I said, I mean, at this, I don't remember exactly what it was we talked about, but we just had like a brief little conversation there, maybe like, oh, we're having a good time and whatnot. And oh, yeah, this is great. This is awesome. But the point being is that their interaction happened. And particularly, she was the one that initiated it. So to me, what I've learned this is what I want to share with you is about the importance of, or the concept of beingness. You could say that as your own presence, how you are, what the the communication, the expression of your presence. What Because that communicates something all the time. And people who are perceptive will pick up on that. And depending on how that person is, who they are, may respond to that in a way, in all kinds of ways. And so when I from that moment, that experience, when I'm like turned on, it's amazing how that can be very magnetic. At least when it comes to interactions with people and such, it's very magnetic. But in the case of um my friend KJ and my grandnephew Zion, it's this interesting. I mean, to me, it's just a reminder of just how powerful we are when our energy is bright. And our energy is so, like, we can be very contagious. As a being of energy, we can be so contagious that we can affect people, right? I'm sure you're familiar with like being around people that are very negative or heavy. And I'm sure you can think about those experiences and how that made you feel when you were around them, right? Notice what was going on at the time. What was it within yourself? What did you observe about the individual or individuals? I ask those questions for the sake of taking note for yourself. But with children, and why these two stole the show is because of just they're so joyful, they're enthusiastic, they're here, they're present, you know, and that's something, and what they're embodying, that's something that's in each and every single one of us. It's never left us. It's a part of us. It's the real you. As they say, it's the good, kind, loving, understanding part of you, the sharing part of you, the joyful part of you, the enthusiastic part of you. But it's interesting how in life, as we grow up, go to school, our intellect is being developed, and we start picking up things, belief systems, concepts from others, and then seeing that shift within us from just being that childlike part, the joyful part, to now it's like, I'm not saying this is for everybody, but in some shape and form, it's affected everybody to some degree, where we start to get heavier and we lose that lightness. We start to take up on things. We start to pick up things that are begin to weigh us down. Now, to what extent, it varies for everybody. But it's amazing how those stories, my belief systems, my conditioning, and when I'm experiencing things in life, how I can view all that, whatever's happening in life, which by the way is all neutral, but the interpretations where the positive, negative factors in. But it's amazing just the stories that I can tell myself that depending on those stories can either uplift me or bring me down. And there's a lot of reasons to feel there's no end to how many excuses, and I'm gonna call them that, to feel down and dull. Turn on the news, you'll get millions of excuses. Turn on social media, you might get millions of excuses. I think the those souls, the babies. This is where I see I see them as teachers and reminders to me. Is to keep it light, and that I have that lightness within me. Even as I'm walking forward on my path, is to always remember to take carry some lightness in my path, and carry some lightness in my step, if that makes sense. There's a lot of things that are, all of us, even though we're not as impressionable as we were when we were babies, when we were children, but we're still, affected by a lot of things because of our energy, right? There's that influence. But like I said before, we're also very, we can be contagious, right? And I think that's another thing that I wanted to spotlight here is that when you're turned on, that can affect people very positively. Although most times in my experience, it's always been very subtle. Like I don't see the immediate result of whatever people pick up from me, and that's fine. That's kind of the general experience, right? On occasions, I might get somebody that really resonated with me, just me being there. I'm not doing much or anything, but like from people who are very perceptive and very vocal, I definitely appreciate those moments. But there's a lot of power in that beingness. But the catch is when it comes to life is that we have our conditioning that have my conditionings that can stop me from being in life, to being my inner child expressed as a mature adult. Those two can work together hand in hand. Can I can be childlike and mature, just as you can. And that to me right there, I think is a pretty awesome quality to have, you know, to be childlike and mature. And so, and one thing also I want to mention that I particularly learned from my grandnephew is that we have an abundance of energy at our disposal. But how often in life, as we're moving through, and especially when it comes to age, how much energy begins to, or we may feel within ourselves starts to dwindle, or may feel like, oh, I don't have as much energy as I did when I was younger. Really? You truly believe that? Because I'm of the notion that That energy never left me. There's like this interesting how that saying, that communication speaks lack to me. Oh, I don't have the energy like I used to when I was younger. Wow, that sounds like a whole lot of lack and a whole lot of allowing life to get you down. Now, mind you, I understand. I'm not trying to point fingers or anything with people that, when life happens and it has hardened people. I I can empathize, I can understand, I can imagine. So this isn't no shape or form be like, oh, because a lot of stuff that I'm saying is easier said than done. And I've had my experiences where I haven't been that light, I haven't tapped into that light and joyful inner child. Trust me on this, right? I'm saying all of this from experience. Like I totally get that. And then the point is I don't want to, and this isn't trying to shame or point fingers, but rather this is just like how I like to do within myself and with people is just to observe, especially observe anything within yourself that you notice. That's like, huh, what's going on here? I mean, that's part of why I share is to help people develop unfold more of their greater self awareness. And I'm just using my story, my experiences, my outlook as the framework here, as the tool. So energy is available. It's abundant. We have it in us. Like I said, we are childlike. That is what we are, who we are as a soul with a physical body. And I think shifting in mindset can go a long way, you know, at least for me. And and you have influence. We have influence. As energy, we have influence. Yeah, the heaviness can, from the collective perspective, no wonder it's pretty strong because if a lot of people are feeling down and heavy, from a collective standpoint, that's a lot. So that's why I get it. I have my moments when I'm not as light as I could be, but that's okay because at the end of the day, we're here to practice. That's what life's all about. It's all about practice. It's not about getting it right. It's not about, oh, I did this wrong. That's not the point. It's all about the process. So, you know, with all that, with some of the things I talked about, one of the things another thing that it reminds me of is that, as I'm moving through life and when I'm doing my day to day stuff and when I'm working with my own goals, right? Think about this. If you're listening to this, I'm sure you may or may not have New Year's resolutions or goals. But wherever you are, if you have or you are thinking about setting a direction with some goals, something I think would be important to strive towards is to have more fun and fulfillment. You know, a couple key questions you can ask yourself here is how can I allow more joy and lightness into my life? What goals can I set for myself into this new year that are actually fun and fulfilling? Goals that would actually get me out of bed because I want to do them that badly. How can I bring about my inner child? How can I help myself come back to life? And there are things that spark, there's something that sparks things within each of us, and it's still there. All it takes is just look back on your experiences. What is something that you've enjoyed recently? What was fulfilling? It doesn't have to be big and extravagant or extreme or profound. It's something simple and small. Anything. A lot of things can be clues, and I think that's really the bigger thing when I look at children, why they make awesome teachers because to me that's like very crucial when it comes to living spiritually. Yes, we have its moments when it's like Yes, I know I have my moments when it's serious and it's heavy at times. I believe there are growing pains. Those are natural and okay. But it's always important through all of that that I come back to lightness, come back home even. Home being the source, the universe, the all that we're one with. To come back to that feeling inside me. You are one with home. You are home. Just point to yourself, point to your heart. Home. I'm putting it on my chest here. Home. And I think that's the very, really, really important thing when it comes to all this because things will come up. Life will put us in certain paths and stuff and put people, situations before us. But we're, but see, but why I believe life works for us is because of what we're capable of. Your life works, your life is there for you because you are capable, because you are powerful. I'm not saying this to patronize or this, and that. This is a fact. This is from what I observed within myself, what people has revealed to me about myself. You have it in you, my friend. You know, even like when I look at when I look at our spirit guides, because I'm not the only ones that have them. If you're listening to this, you have help as well. I've heard it said that our angels are like wise children. Makes sense to me because it's about that lightness, the play, the fun. Again, no wonder it's no wonder why people, really can feel elevated just looking at a child, a baby, because that's a need. And I think when it comes to unfolding more, it's not about how can I be more happy, how can I be more joyful, how can I be more happy, how can I be more joyful. Frame it like this: what's keeping me from being more joyful, more enthusiastic, light, and bright in my life? Because 9 times out of 10, there's a block involved. And oftentimes I've discovered it boils down to my conditioning, my programming, the belief systems that I'm still taking on that really came from somebody else. And this is the value I see of doing the inner work because it's uncovering these things, uncovering in essence, what are the ways in which I'm holding myself back? Yo, what's holding me back? Because, like I said, when you look at a child without the conditioning and the programming, and you look at a baby, that's the that's the standard for the natural state that we are: happy, joyful, enthusiastic, curious, exploring, adventurous, involved. Then that intellect, that conditioning starts coming in, and then it can be a pain in the ass. I say that because it's one thing to be aware of it, but then what I've learned in my journey is like it's a process to undo the programming and conditioning. It's not like it's a one and done thing. Oop, and I'm done. Not quite. Maybe with some things in some areas, but it's really situational for each person. But what I've come to learn, there's some things that take time. And again, I want to fall back to what I mentioned earlier about life is about practice. Life is about practice. So it's like working through that process and remembering. And this just to even add a bigger, more context and to give that bigger picture. Life is a school. This planet is a school. This is why it makes sense to me. And this is my part of my worldview, how I show up. Like everything here, class is always in session. I always have opportunity to learn, grow, heal, and so much more. To be of service, it's an ongoing thing while we're here, while we're living in this planet, while we're in this realm of existence now. So consider that question for yourself. What are the ways am I holding myself back What's keeping me from being more joyful? What belief systems am I carrying about myself, about others, about the world that isn't helping me? So I really appreciate, the time spent with these two old souls because, like I said, for me, I'm always have to remind myself because I've been there. I'll probably be there again at some point. I'm not saying that to be pessimistic or anything. It's just part of life, the human conditioning. Maybe you could say human nature, perhaps. But just because it's part of nature, or rather a tendency, doesn't mean it's the end all be all or the defining factor. Because at the end of the day, you and I and your neighbors are all free. We always have a choice. And the more we tap into our own greater self awareness and being more conscious, the more of our freedom we unfold and we hone in on. Because with more freedom comes more power and responsibility. I'm sounding like Uncle Ben. But there's truth to that. And I think that really relates a lot to our own freedom. Because, man, I can't tell you how many times I've recognized how I use my own freedom against myself, my habits, these thinking patterns. Again, but still, I'm saying all this, but I want to bring us back to practice. And as long as you're committed to growing yourself, to heal, that commitment to yourself right there, if you have that, you'll make it, you'll be fine. And even then, everybody else is going to be just fine. Everybody's going to be just fine. Because the bigger picture, we're all souls, one with all. And all the things going on here is just this human experience, this realm of existence. It's not like that out there in the universe. You know, the chaos and all the misery, that's not out there at source at home. Really, when you look at a child, a baby, that's a perfect image of what home is in terms of like looking at what they exemplify, like based on like what I basically was sharing with you in this episode. Like those I would consider like qualities of what home is truly like. Heaven, if you will. So I wanted to share this particular episode because I think especially is super important, especially because given that where we are at the time of the year now, where it's a new year, new opportunities, you know, I'm definitely using my tapping into my inner child to look at this new year as a new adventure with limitless possibilities ahead of me, but really focusing on the good, what can build me, you know? And we have choice into what we invite into our life. We just got to decide. Make a choice. And when you do, just make sure it's for you. Like I said, you have your life to live. No one's going to live your life for you. That's why I say make that choice for yourself. Can't expect anyone else to do it for you. That's not why we're here in this school. This school is all about inner leadership, living purposefully, being of service. But that inner leadership, leading yourself, ah, that's our responsibilities to ourselves. That's my responsibility to myself. That is your responsibility to yourself. And this is what I put together so far in my life. And I believe this is true. So, but in all of this and what I mentioned earlier, just never forget to keep it light. That fun and fulfillment piece, because that makes for a good barometer. When you feel good, And I'll end this episode on this. One of the things that a good friend of mine, a mentor, mentioned to me, shared with me and some other people in our class here, a little online class we had. You know, especially if you're someone that's very wanting to, if you care about living purposely, if you're on the right path, if you're doing well, consider this: do you have more up days than down days, or do you have more down days than up days? If you have more up days than down days, then you're pretty much on track in your life's purpose. However, if you have more down days than up days, then that right there is asking us to make some adjustments. And 9 times out of 10, they're just small tweaks, small adjustments, nothing profound, nothing crazy. You don't have to go through hula hoop, jump over a hurdle, do some stop, drop, and rolls, and do jumping jacks and push ups to do that tiny adjustment. Something small, and and everybody has that intuitive knowingness, that sense of what it is. It's not rocket science. So how you feel, that right there is a good barometer. That's all it is. It's a good barometer. Like, okay, I'm doing what I need to do. Just ask, how do you feel? And then follow up question you could ask is like, how do I feel? Or what will I do? What can I do about what can I do about my situation if I'm not feeling where I would like to feel? Or if I'm not as light and bright. Anyway, I feel like I'm kind of going around in circles at this point, so I just want to leave it there, my friend. And I hope you got something out of this. And you know, happy New Year to you. And I wish you nothing but success, abundance, joy, laughter, and I look forward, as we move into this year with nothing but enthusiasm. And remembering that each and every single day and single moment in time is but an adventure that we're all going through. We're not at it alone either. We have help. And no matter what, everything's going to be all right. So, this has been another episode of Spiritually Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Cepeda, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend.